Business, sort of generally speaking, seems to operate a lot on a very narrow notion of profit motive. And if somehow or another the environmental dimensions of economic decision making, if that were incorporated into business decisions, that would help an awful lot.
Essentially, what John Wasilewski didn't know when he began the development process is that John Rensenbrink lived down the river here, probably about a mile.
Our neighbors came over to visit Carla one day with the news that, oh my goodness, there's going to be a real big project that's going to be put in on the banks of the Cathance River.
What we were proposing was an 18-hole golf course, 300 to 400 single-family homes scattered about, and within DEP regulations, 250 feet from the Cathance River, no conservation preserve except around the heath.
CREA began as a result of John Wasilewski striking a compromise with Topsom's Future, a group headed up by the Rensenbrinks of Topsom.
We met with John Wasilewski and several of his people, and we had quite a conversation.
We had an entourage of maybe 8 people. They had an entourage of maybe about 8 people, so we had a big table between us. Ryan Kent explained to the group who he was. He was a landscape architect, and he then said, "We want to present you, Mr. Wasilewski, and your team with an alternative design plan for Highland Green." I was immediately thinking, John, you got to find a compromise, because if you don't, you may never bring this project to a construction start.
And above and beyond those compromises, from an 18-hole golf course to a 9-hole golf course, and a 250-foot buffer along the river to a 1,000-foot buffer along the river, he provided seed money for an organization to be founded, which is CREA.
I tell you, I've been hiking with them, and it's no fun. Really.
Yeah, you didn't hit your ball over here, did you?
Well, we're trying to find a ball.
No hunting.
Founded in the year 2000.
I'm really concerned about kids who grow up in this highly technical society and have no relationship with nature, just don't know much about it at all, and what that would mean for the future of this country. So the preserve is close to a few schools, and kids can get there and get to know it and get to care about it.
CREA is founded on the basis of conservation, but also education, where they're training to ultimately be someone who can recognize a compromise when development impacts a town.
Looking at them in the microscope to see if they're, especially in the stem, if there are any differences based on how much moisture they have.
Have you done just transects here? Vegetation transects
I
from
don't think they've done it
down
yet, but that would be, yeah.
That would be a lot of fun to correlate the nymphs up to the adults. So literally a kid starting in the spring, anytime.
John Wasilewski is both an environmentalist in some ways and a rabid capitalist in others.
For instance, just straight business sense, this allowed me to get approvals. The compromise with CREA allowed my business to gain approvals in half the time of what a traditional development can get, because the potential opponent went with me to the planning board.
You have people, I think, on both extremes that kind of look at an organization like this with a bit of skepticism.
Both are inherently mistrustful of the other.
Business, sort of generally speaking, seems to operate a lot on a very narrow notion of profit motive. And if somehow or another the environmental dimensions of economic economic decision making. If that were incorporated into business decisions, that would help an awful lot in helping environmentalists and business people to not only tolerate each other, but to really work together. I don't think we gave up an awful lot. The only thing that really, I suppose, sometimes concerns us, even now, is when we see the incredible amount of earth moving that's taking place. But on the other hand, that too is civilization. People in civilization do that with nature. I mean, beavers do that also. I mean, so,
Right.
you know.
It's a stretch.
Of course we have John Wozzeski. I could call him the eager beaver in this regard.
There are not too many organizations like the Cathance River Education Alliance. The whole story of how it was born, the whole story of how, you know, we've gotten to where we are right now is very, very unique. 10, 15, 20 years down the road, there are going to be more organizations like us, very grassroots.
I've gotten calls from several of my developer associates who applauded me for doing it and said, I wish I could do it, but my project doesn't work that way. And I would retort to them, you have to make it work that way.
I think we're a great example of how you can both have development and provide recreational and educational opportunities.